Mr. Bradshaw, why should farmers be an exception? Others have to pay inheritance tax, why shouldn't you?
Unfortunately, the margins we're making from food production are just so low. On average, it's about a 0.5% return on capital. I really hope not. We don't want we don't want our consumers to bear the brunt of this. This is an issue with an ill-thought-through government policy.
This policy is cruel, it is unfair, and it is going to destroy farming as we know it.
You are feeding our families and you're struggling to feed your own. That is just so wrong.
Nigel Farage's Reform UK is set to become the third largest party in Parliament, according to shocking new projections. This seismic shift could reshape British politics as we know it. But how did we get here? It's a tale of Labour's broken promises and voter disillusionment. Join us as we break down the numbers and explore what this means for the future of the UK. Picture this: Keir Starmer strolling through a picturesque farm, confident in Labour's rural support.
Look, I do understand their concerns. What I've pointed out is, firstly, that at the budget we put £5 billion into farming over the next 2 years. That's the single biggest amount of money that's being put into farming because I want to support our farmers.
The promise made to farmers was that this agricultural property relief, that inheritance taxes were not on the table or not being looked at, made by the then DEFRA Shadow Secretary Steve Reed. And so the betrayal comes because, now the trouble is that I think really farming has been let down by successive governments who haven't perhaps understood the challenges of growing food in this country.
Little does he know, he's about to step into a political minefield of his own making. Labour's recent changes to inheritance tax for agricultural property have set off a firestorm in farming communities. The party's decision to reduce agricultural property relief has left many farmers feeling betrayed and abandoned. It's a classic case of urban politicians misunderstanding the realities of rural life. Take the Johnsons, a family who've worked their 200-acre farm for generations. On paper, their land is worth millions, but in reality, they're barely scraping by. The new inheritance tax rules mean they might have to sell off parcels of land just to keep the farm running. It's a story playing out across the country, with thousands of family farms facing an uncertain future. The National Farmers Union didn't mince words in their response. They warned that these changes could push many family farms into liquidation. It's not just about the farms themselves.
A mile wide, an inch deep, but this is what we've talked about the real change that the UK needs, which is a system that is not the first past the post scenario anymore.
I mean, the whole thing's absolutely bonkers, and it needs to be reformed along with much else in our country. For every single Labour MP, there are 34,000 votes, right? For every Reform MP, there are 815,000 votes.
We're talking about the lifeblood of rural communities. These farms provide jobs, support local businesses, and maintain the countryside we all cherish. But Starmer and his team seem oblivious to the damage they're causing. They've managed to alienate a key demographic that Labour desperately needs to win a general election. It's as if they've forgotten that rural votes count just as much as urban ones. The consequences? They're potentially catastrophic for Labour. Early projections suggest the party could lose a significant number of seats in farming regions. The West Country, once a potential battleground, now looks like it's slipping away. And it's not just there. Labour's standing in rural areas across the country is taking a nosedive. But here's the kicker. This rural revolt is just the tip of the iceberg. As we're about to see, Starmer's troubles are only beginning. His mishandling of the farming community is just one in a series of missteps that are costing Labour dearly. So, as we watch Labour's support crumble in the countryside, we have to ask, is this the beginning of the end for Starmer's leadership? Or can he pull off a miraculous recovery? One thing's for certain. The road ahead is looking increasingly rocky for the Labour Party. Just when Starmer thought his rural woes were bad enough, he's about to face an even bigger challenge. Picture this: a town hall meeting erupts into chaos as a group of women confront the Labour leader. These aren't just any voters, they represent nearly 4 million potential ballots. What promise did Labour break that could turn these women against them? Enter the WASPy women. Women Against State Pension Inequality. Born in the 1950s, these women have had their retirement plans shattered by changes to the state pension age. The government implemented these changes without adequate notice, leaving many facing unexpected financial hardship. It's a perfect storm of broken promises and bureaucratic indifference. Starmer's response? A resounding no to compensation. It's a decision that's left many scratching their heads. After all, these women have been loyal Labour supporters for decades. Now, they're watching their retirement dreams slip away, and Labour seems unwilling to help. The potential impact on Labour's electoral chances is staggering. We're talking about 3.8 million women, a significant voting bloc in key constituencies. Many of these women are facing losses of thousands of pounds in pension income. It's not just about money, it's about dignity and trust in the political system. Labour's stance on this issue is far from united. Some MPs are pushing for compensation, arguing that it's not just a legal issue, but a moral one. Others, like Starmer, seem more concerned with the financial implications. It's a rift that's playing out in public, and voters are taking notice. Pension experts are weighing in too, and their verdict isn't favourable for Labour. Many argue that the legal and moral arguments for compensation are compelling. They point out that the government's handling of the pension age changes was deeply flawed, leaving many women with little time to adjust their financial plans. So, how many seats could this issue cost Labour? Early projections are grim. In traditional Labour strongholds, where these women make up a significant portion of the electorate, support is crumbling. We're seeing a shift that could redraw the political map of Britain. As Labour's support among WASPy women erodes, a new political force is emerging. These women, once staunch Labour supporters, are now looking for alternatives. They're organising, they're vocal, and they're ready to make their voices heard at the ballot box. The question is, can Starmer afford to ignore them? As we look back at Starmer's series of missteps, it's clear that Labour's electoral prospects are in serious jeopardy. The party's alienation of rural voters and the WASPy women has created a perfect storm of discontent. These aren't isolated incidents, but part of a broader pattern of disconnection from key voter groups. Recent polling data paints a grim picture for Labour. Reform UK's surge is nothing short of remarkable, with projections suggesting they could become the third largest party in Parliament. This rise comes at Labour's expense, eating away at their support base and throwing their election strategy into disarray. The question now is whether Starmer can learn from these mistakes and rebuild trust. Can he reconnect with the voters he's alienated, or is it too late to change course? The clock is ticking, and with each passing day, Labour's path to victory becomes narrower. Starmer's leadership is facing its ultimate test, and the future of British politics hangs in the balance.